Alright, so this is Steven, also known as Fresh SMP, with Games After Work here. I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick walkthrough of how to get a game started in Civ 6. This game was released recently. It's the sixth installation of Sid Meier's Civilization series. It's a fantastic series. If you haven't played the other ones, definitely give them a shot. 4 was my favorite, but 6 is definitely made a lot of really good improvements from 5. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do single player, create a game. To start out with, I always like to do the United States. I'm a little partial to that. So start with Teddy Roosevelt. I'm going to put the game difficulty down. If this is the first time playing, I'd play on Settler to give yourself the best chance to begin with. The point of these games is not to, uh, you know, do the thing that's hardest, especially early on, because you're going to get frustrated and you're going to give up on the game. So give Settler a try first, and then work your way up through the difficulties. But I'm going to go ahead and do Chieftain. I set the game speed standard. Map type, I like to do continents, but they also have fractal, inland seas, island plates, Pangea, and then shuffle. Obviously, you can do a random. I like doing really large map sizes. My computer can handle it, and I like being able to uh, fight or work with as many people as possible, or other AIs. All right, so we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 random leaders at first. So with us, that's 12. Let's go ahead and leave it at that. The only thing I do want to change is the score victory. I want to take that off because I don't like there being a turn limit on it. So what I usually do is go down here to limit by turns and then go no turn limit. That's only if I make it towards the later end game stuff, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and click Start Game because everything else is pretty much the way we set it up to begin with. All right. Teddy Roosevelt was kind of a weird choice for them, I think. I'm not quite sure why Teddy was their choice, but it's been like Washington and Lincoln before. This time I guess they needed a little bit of a change. But here you can see not only do you get kind of a written introduction, but you also see the features and abilities of your civilization. So for America, we get the Roosevelt corollary. Units receive +5 combat strength from their home continent, +1 appeal to all tiles in a city with national parks, so that helps if you have national parks. You also gain the Rough Rider unit. It's a unique unit when you research rifling technology, so that'll give you a little bit better of, I think, what would natively be the Musketeer. You also get the P-51 Mustang unique air unit, which usually the unique units have a little bit higher stats than the other stats. The stats for the default units. Also, the unique building for for the American civilization is the film studio. I haven't quite seen what that is yet. I haven't gotten that far in the game. Then we're going to hit begin game. All right. So when you first start the game, you're going to end up in a random position around the world. Sometimes this can be really badly for you because if you end up in, say, like a tundra, it's not a great place to be. It's not very fertile. It's not great for your civilization to start. But here we actually look like we have a pretty good starting point. So we'll go ahead and let this one play out, even though the tundra is pretty close to us here. We've also got some good luxury resources. We've got coffee here. Rice will give us a bonus for food. And then we've got stone up here, which will give us a bonus for production. And we've also got copper down here, which will give us a bonus for production as well. When you're starting in Civ 6, one of the biggest things you want to look at is the map options. Yield icons, if you turn that on right under map options right down here, You can see, this is especially helpful if you're new to the game. It shows all the different yields for the different tiles. So for this tile, we've got 2 food. For the rice tile, you can see we've got 4 food. That's what rice gives you. If you have a grassland with woods on it, that gives you 2 food, and then the production, 1 production. And you can see here, same with the stone. And then the coffee actually gives you +1 culture, because the coffee resource provides culture as well if you're harvesting it. One of the biggest things you want to pay attention to down here as well is if you have a settler, the water availability guide is really good, so it's really beneficial to be in a place with fresh water. You get a boost for your first city if you're near coastal water. You get no boost if you're near no water, and then the tiles turn red if you're too close to another city when you have a settler. So obviously we have no other cities right now, and we are near fresh water. That's why there's a check mark in there. So this is an ideal place for us to build our city. So we're going to go ahead and do that. When you have a settler, keep in mind if you build a city over a resource, it default gives you that resource. So for here, we've got 3 food icons. So if we build our city here, we're going to by default already start out with 3 + 3 food. So it's a great place to build. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll come down here to the Found City button. Click on that. Alright, so we founded our first city. It's called Washington. You zoom in, you can see it's a pretty neat little tribal city. I like the graphics in Civ 6. They're pretty cool. So now we get a little bit of America traditional music going on in the background. Alright, so the second unit that we have is a warrior unit. If you scroll over them, it says America, warrior. They're going to be the basic military unit, right? So they're only going to be able to move usually 1 space at a time, regardless of the terrain. Actually, if you see here, you can go through the city, and I'm guessing that's because they think it's easier to move through the city. You can actually move 2 spaces there. Alright, so we'll go ahead. The goal with your first warrior is to get out and try to explore the adjacent area, the immediately adjacent area, because there's 2 main things you have to keep in mind when you are starting a Civ 6 game. The 2 things you want to do in the very beginning is you want to find villages and you want to find city-states. So when you find villages, they'll automatically give you a bonus in some way. It'll either be gold, money, or it'll be advances in technology or things like that. So those are great assets to find early on. The next one is city-states. If you're the first one to find a city-state, you automatically get +1 to your relationship to that city-state. So the +1 relationship starts you off with the first goal completion of the relationship with the city-state, which gives you a benefit. So we'll look into that in a little bit when that happens. But like I said, the first thing you want to do is try to find villages and city-states. So I'm going to send my warrior down here. Having discovered another continent, we realize there's a wide world of trading opportunities. So here's another thing in Civ 6. There's now this idea of continents that are not just broken up by separate land masses. You can actually have multiple continents on single land masses, kind of like the way we have in the real world, right? So Asia and Europe, they're on the same land mass, but they are broken up into separate continents. So because I found another continent, it's given me a boost in foreign trade, which is a code of law that we'll talk about in a minute, which is very similar to the civic system of Civ 5. All right, so I'll say OK there. It'll show up over here. This is where the alerts come down here on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Oh, you actually can't see that because of my picture here. But if you come down to the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that it says New Continent Discovered, or on the right-hand side over here, you'll see alerts that pop up. So I'm going to click on the New Continent Discovered, and it shows me over on the left-hand side, there's 2 names. It's Vindian and then Laurasia. So Laurasia is the new continent that I discovered. Vindian is the continent that I was on before, and I can tell that by the color coding here on the map. So the yellow shows the continent that I was on and that I started on. Laurasia shows this mountain that my warrior saw off in the distance, and that happens to be part of another continent called Laurasia. So it gave me that boost there. Alright, so if I just come up to the top right, click X, that'll get me back. Alright, so pretty much now at the bottom right hand side, as with all the other Civ games, you can't actually move on to the next turn until you fulfill a lot of the basic things that are necessary for this one turn. So the next step it has for me is to choose a production, and it wants me to choose the production for my city that I founded. So if I click on that bottom right hand, I will see a list on the right hand side that has all of my choices. The thing I always start out with, if you look over here, you can see the recommendations. It's the little picture of your advisor. It's the woman. If you're kind of lost, always go with the recommendations. But I always start out with a scout, right? Because remember, one of my big things early on in the game is to try to find as many villages and be the first one to contact other city-states. So I'm going to build a scout. Scouts can move more quickly across terrain than, say, warriors can. But they're also not as strong, so they don't work as well against enemy units or barbarians. Alright, so the next thing it wants me to do is choose research. So I'm going to click on that bottom right circle again. It's going to open up the available technologies to me. Let's see, going around me I've got rice, stone, and coffee. Nothing that's going to immediately help me except for mining, so I'm going to go ahead and click that mining, get that started first. Alright, so now if we look at the bottom right hand side, we can see that it says next turn. We'll go ahead and click that and let it process this turn. Alright, so we're all set. So our turn is now finished, the other players got to go. Now we are back on our warrior, so we're going to continue our trek around the immediate vicinity to try to find villages or city-states, and that's what we've done. So our first tribal village has shown up down here on the bottom left-hand side. That's great for us, and that's where we're going to continue to head with our warrior. Alright, looks like we're all done otherwise. Our scout's being built. Our first city, Washington, is growing. If we click on it, then we can see down at the bottom on the right-hand side where it says Washington. The green bar at the bottom says 3 turns until growth. Then to the right of that, it says 9 turns until completion of the scout. So that'll give us kind of a heads-up understanding of that. Alright, so we'll click next turn, keep that moving. Alright, so we are now moving along with our warrior down here, trying to get that village first before anybody else does. Still the same situation, everything's still growing. Continue the next turn. Alright, finally we get the ability to move on to this village. So our warrior moves onto the village, and then it says, Eureka! Villagers share a hidden technical secret. So your knowledge of masonry has advanced considerably. Unlike previous Civ games, when you encounter villages this time, they only give you half of the full technology, so you actually have to continue researching the technology. Previously, when you contacted villages, a lot of times it would give you a full technology, but that's a little bit different here. So we've got half of masonry now completed, and that's all we got out of that one, so that's cool though. It's always good to have those halfway completed, because then when it comes time to actually research them, you've got a good leg up on it. Alright, so we'll go to next turn. Alright, still moving our warrior around, because we haven't really found much with the village. Until we get our scout moving around, we'll just use our warrior to scout out. Alright, next turn. Alright, so again, we're back to our warrior. We'll go ahead and move them across the river. Rivers take a lot of movement points, right? So we haven't gone over that yet. If you click on a unit, you can come down here on the right-hand side and see it says movement. And so for this warrior right now, it says 0 out of 2. So crossing a river actually takes 2 units of movement. So even if I crossed over into a grass field like I did last time, a grassland, I couldn't use that last movement point to cross the river because I only had 1 movement point left. So I actually had to wait until the next turn until I had 2 movement points to move across the river. Alright, so we'll go ahead and next turn. We're waiting on everything to build up. The early part of Civ games are always rather slow, but then things build up really quickly and it starts to sometimes become over encumbering. Alright, so we'll continue to move our warrior over here. If you move units onto hills, you actually get a better line of sight than just on, say, like a grass plain or a grassland. So always keep that in mind. Now you don't get two hex units of view like this way because there is another hill over here and that's blocking behind. Also the same thing with the mountains. I'm not going to be able to see behind the mountains. But if this was a grassland, I'd actually be able to see through that grassland onto the next hex units if I was on a hill. So we'll keep going. Alright, so now we can cross the river here. We're running up against a pretty massive mountain range. That's another thing that they've done with Civ 6 here is they've made the idea of mountain ranges much more lifelike. So instead of having sparse mountains around the map, you tend to have ranges now that are in linear patterns. Alright, so we're going to continue going. We're only 2 turns away from our scout up here, and 2 turns away from the city grounding. Alright, so we finished mining. We had a cool little quote. So we finished mining. Now we're going to go ahead and move our warrior again. I'm going to move him this way just so I can scout that coastline. Oh! So we've run into our first other civilization. Oh, crap. So the first people we ran into was the UK. They are well known for their imperialism. So hopefully the video game version of the UK is a little bit more friendly and nice to newly found civilizations than they were in real life. So we're just going to try to do everything as nice as we can to begin with, right? If you keep your friends close and your enemies closer, it's always a rule of thumb to go by when playing Civ games. So we're going to start out as nice as we can. We're going to say, it's an honor to meet you. And she says, it's our distinct privilege to extend you an invitation to visit the realm, which I imagine is rather simple due to our many colonies, of course. So we would love to sample your hospitality. And if you get on that, after meeting another civilization, you see the need for new ways to communicate. So in this game of Civ as well, as you reach new milestones, like meeting another civilization, you also get boosts in technology as well. So because we met another civilization and we haven't figured out writing yet, our civilization has been given a boost in the writing technology research because we haven't done that yet. So it's all very logical. It all makes a lot of sense. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and continue here. We've met a new civilization, the English Empire, and if we look down here, we can see the English Scout, right, the Red Scout. And then we've also been given the privilege of a map of London, so we can see the surrounding area around London. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and continue our research, because remember, we finished our mining research. So the next thing I'll go for, the number down here on the bottom left side is the number of turns it'll take to complete that technology. So we have 2 to 8 turns left. That's animal husbandry and pottery. Pottery is good for allowing harvesting wheat and rice. Actually, probably should have done pottery first. I didn't know that was rice. So we'll go ahead and click pottery. That'll be what we're starting to research up here. Alright. So we'll go to the next turn. What's not too good about London being down here, or the UK? Okay, so it tells us about our scout being unique. What's not good about the UK being down here is that it means that they probably sent out scouts around them. And so if there were any city-states down here, that they made first contact with them so they get the benefit and we don't get the benefit. We shall see. So let's go ahead and continue our exploration with our warrior down here to the southeast. So now we have our scout unit. Let's go ahead and take them up north since nobody's up there. I don't know if you've figured out yet, but when you have a unit click, the light blue outline shows the extent to which you can move that unit that turn. If you want to be the safest you can, I would only move them one hexagon at a time, because sometimes, like, say up here, if the map is hidden by the fog of war, there may be something up there, like a barbarian unit, and if I just click up here to make them go up there, they'll automatically go, and then they may run the chance of running into that barbarian unit without me being able to stop them. So I do it one at a time. So I'm going to come up here to the north once. That's going to open that up so I can now see it because of my scout. I'm going to move over here. We'll get that cool little sound. So what that means is we found another village up here. So we'll head towards that village, and I'll go this way with the scout. Alright, so we're going to choose our production again. So we built a scout this time. We've got no recommendations. So really at this point, you got one of two ways you can go. Actually, one of three ways. It's arguable which one you want to do. The first one is going to be whether you want to build a monument, right? So you can get head up on your, like a leg up on your culture production. That's only going to take 12 turns, but that'll improve a base culture production of +2. You can also build a settler to get a new city built as quickly as possible. We actually have a pretty good location down here towards these other two rivers, especially on the coastline here. So that might not be a bad bet right now, but that does take the most amount of turns. It's going to be the slowest. The third that I would suggest is to build a warrior, right? Another warrior or another scout, so that we can continue to scout out the areas around us to make sure that we're picking up all of those city-states that we can. Hold on one second. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and for this one, I think I'm going to go ahead and go balls out. So I'm going to go for the settler so that we can build this next city as quickly as possible. Um, while we haven't yet met a city-state, I did want to just go ahead and show you how I tend to start these games. So there's a very basic introduction to how to start a civilization in Civ 6 and some of the basics that you need to understand when getting the launching point for your civilization going. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Again, my name is Steven, Fresh S&P with Games After Work. I'll see you folks later. I'll be doing a continuing series of these as well, so this is only the first one. Adios.